Okay, welcome everybody to the November 20th LF Decentralized Trust Technical Advisory Council meeting. I think most of us have been on the call before, but just a reminder, there are two things that we have to abide by on the call. The first is our antitrust policy. So we need to be aware of and not participate in any activities that are prohibited under any of the antitrust and competition laws across the world. The second thing that we have to abide by is our code of conduct. While everybody is welcome here, we do need to be respectful of others on the call. And if you do need to see the full text of the code of conduct, that is linked in the agenda. For announcements today, we have the Dev Weekly Developer Newsletter that goes out each Friday. If you do have something that you would like to include in that newsletter, please do leave a comment for consideration on the wiki page that is linked in the agenda. The second announcement that we have is that Maintainer Days registration is open, and you can register at the link that is in the agenda. The Maintainer Days event is free for all attendees, and if you are a maintainer, registration is also included for the LFDT member summit, even if you are not part of an LFDT member company. And then the last announcement is that we will be canceling next week's meeting due to Thanksgiving in the United States. So just a reminder that you don't have to attend next week. Are there any other announcements that anybody has or would like to make today? Okay, if not, then we will move forward with the agenda. So we do have a number of quarterly reports that are out there. When I did put the agenda together, then none of these had enough approvals yet to get merged. Some of these are now a few weeks old, so if you haven't had a chance to have a look at that, please do provide your approvals. I think we're one short on a number of them, and then a lot more than one short on some other ones. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance, please do have a look at those, and then we can get those merged in. Are there any questions though on those quarterly reports that anybody has or would like to bring up? Okay. So then we have some overdue reports. We've got some from Q3, specifically Trust over IP Q3 report that was due on September 25th. The Identis one I did see come in. The Aroha one, I don't know why I didn't remove it from here because it's up above. And then the Firefly report was also due last week. I don't think I've seen that one come in yet. So those are our overdue reports. We do have two reports that are due today, the Besu and the Caliper Q4 reports. So we'll hopefully see those coming in. And then I think the next reports we have are not till December that are due. So I'll make sure to get those added to the, well, I guess I should have added it since we're canceling next week's meeting. But yeah, there are a couple more reports that are going to be due that the following week. So have a look at the update calendar and see if your report happens to be one of them. And then we can get those submitted as well for the beginning of December. Okay, for discussion items today, we do have a couple items that I wanted to talk about. The first one is the Project Consistency Task Force PR. So this has been out there for a couple weeks. I think the last meeting that I attended was 2 weeks ago, and it was brought up as being ready for people to have a review. There have been a few comments put on that particular PR, so I thought maybe we could discuss those today and make sure that, you know, if anybody else had any comments, we could also get those out so that we can hopefully get that one checked in. So let's start there, and then we'll take in review our 2025 goals and see where we're at with those. Let's start with the feedback, I guess. So I think there's a few that are already taken care of and outdated. So maybe just the ones for the last couple weeks we can take a look at.
Hey Tracy, yeah, I was just looking through some of the comments earlier, and yeah, there's the odd kind of typo that I need to go and fix with a link to totally the wrong place. I think Arun has put the most recent comments in with quite a few really valuable ideas, and I think Peter's comments. I'm just trying to see if Peter is on. Looks like he's not. Is that right?
No, I don't think he's on today.
So I think his thoughts from September have been incorporated into the PR as it stands. And again, he made some kind of really useful comments around kind of suggestions on commit messages and so on.
Yeah, sorry. Then did we want to go down to Arun's comment, Rai? I think he put it in today. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. The first one, I think I totally agree. I'd be happy to include that additional kind of benefit that he's highlighted and kind of worded out there. So yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, Arun. I'd be happy to kind of put that in. I think it's useful to reiterate about it is about achieving high standards and structuring things consistently and so on. So yeah, what I will perhaps do, Arun, is maybe put a commit into the PR and then just drop a reply to that comment once I've done that to see if you're happy with the way I've worded that.
Sounds good.
And then yeah, I think the next comment, Arun, if you want to scroll down to the next comment, Tracy. So Arun then has proposed a whole bunch of really useful suggestions here. So we could go through some of these on the call now if we want. In some respects, maybe talking through one or two of them now would kind of maybe reiterate some of the discussion we had in the task force itself about what the aim of the consistency PR is and isn't. That might help us land on some takeaway actions, perhaps for me to update the PR. My suspicion is that at a first look, and I've only looked at it this afternoon, some of them may be things that we felt in the task force that they were more things that projects should be allowed or should be encouraged or should be totally free to make their own judgment calls on how to run the project. And I think I'm just gonna maybe I'll just go through a little to see if I can find some examples that might be useful to discuss separately. So I guess item 2 might be interesting on a public decision-making process for features and bugs. So I think that's a useful aim. I think it's a valid aim that projects should have. I think what that suggestion there to me describes is probably captured by tangentially some of the other guidelines, best practices, and so on. So I think if you roll up the fact that projects have their source code typically in GitHub and certainly in open source, and that they're encouraged to have discussions on Discord. I think there is probably already in the consistency or in the guidelines and best practices across the TAC. There's probably enough there that I think already says that we are strongly encouraging, and in some cases we might even be going further than that and almost mandating public decisions. So that would be my initial ticket. For example, just that second one down, which felt like a good one to maybe discuss. Tracy, go for it.
Yeah, so I can read this one of two ways, I think, right? One is potentially discussing the way that RFCs are done on a number of projects, which obviously we do have in a number of other um, best practice guidelines documents that exist. The second way I could read this is where I think you may have been going, Matthew, which is this whole um, requirement that we have for projects in incubation. We actually just added it, I think, to have our discussions, our technical discussions in a public forum, be it Discord or GitHub issues or something like that, right? So I guess I would ask Arun maybe which one of these, or what were you thinking about specifically when you wrote this particular point, to make sure that we're discussing what it is you were trying to get across.
I, I think in the past we have documented things such as it is a best practice if a project follows an RFC process for introducing new features and things like that. But I believe like it's left the projects whether they follow an RFC process or not. It's not like a mandated option. And similar to that, if we can recommend projects that hey, you come up with a mechanism, or maybe here is the recommended mechanism from a governance standpoint that we recommend this practice has less friction from maintainers, but at the same time achieves the objective that we want projects to have. That's the direction I was thinking. I agree in terms that we have had efforts in the past, but those are all more of a guidelines than saying that this is a standard across all the projects, that anybody having any questions on any of the LFTD projects, they can come and look at this info for such details. Right? Bringing in that consistency is what I was thinking about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Arun. So to take that particular one, I think that would be one I'd be happy to maybe take away as a point to just kind of reread through what we do talk about elsewhere on that, and maybe it is something that we could wrap up into this PR, just because in some respects we were I was certainly pushing quite strongly on the task force not to duplicate things that we've asserted or given suggestions for elsewhere. So I kind of probably erred on the side of less is more, but I certainly would be happy to go and have a look. I know, Tracy, you've just posted a link which points at the best practices document. Did you want to open that on the screen, maybe, Tracy, just for us to have a look at?
Yeah, so it's actually Rye sharing the screen, but so this is the project best practices guidelines that we have, where we talk about using an RFC process to drive kind of that consensus and track agreement on kind of the major decisions, features, designs. So, I guess the question, because the way I read what this consistency task force was trying to do was put together things that were not covered elsewhere per se.
That was certainly, I think, one of the leading aims we had was not to duplicate content or guidance elsewhere, just because partly it leads you to then diverge when someone tweaks one later on, they don't tweak the other one, and so things diverge. And also because we know that project maintainers have a lot to consume and keep up to date with, and if we overload them with documents that heavily overlap in what they're saying, I think that doesn't help the project maintainers with keeping the projects healthy from a TAC point of view. I think that's that's possibly just one of the items that that Arun had listed down. I wonder if right, we could switch back. And number 3, the next one down, was also, I think, an interesting one, a pathway for new contributors to become maintainers. So I think that's possibly worth some discussion here. Again, I think depending on how you read that, and I really welcome your kind of view on quite what you're thinking about there. But the technical path to being a maintainer, I think probably through project charters and the fact that the TAC encourages projects to consider, customizing or having their own charter that diverges, if necessary, from the default template one. I think the technical pathway is, for me, covered in other documents like project charters, but I think the more of the self-development or mentoring or the journey to being eligible technically is perhaps an area that might be useful to include in the PR. Did you want, Arun, I don't know if you want to comment on what, where you were coming from with that item number 3.
Sure. So I was thinking about contributors marked on file that we were thinking about, or like we already have, and maybe proposing a section over there that talks about. Okay, so if each project have their own pathways for how to become a maintainer, maybe this can become a landing page for them, saying that here is a link where you find more info about it. It was about like consistently finding for all the projects similar info again. I'm pretty sure like all the projects have been in the past informed that they need to have a pathway for maintainers, for contributors to become maintainers. And what I don't see is each project, what I see rather is like each project having their own means of communicating that. I welcome suggestions, or if like this is something that we can avoid, I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah, so I think if I understand correctly, that you're really talking there about projects kind of making it nice and clear and obvious to potential maintainers what that journey is, as much as what the technical kind of requirements are, but how projects are communicating that pathway more generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly think that gut feel would be that general kind of encouragement about communication is something that probably isn't as likely to be covered elsewhere. And I think that's a kind of a slightly softer aim, and I think the task force PR actually is about softer aims, because it's not designed to have must do statements and should do statements within it, like the actual other governance documents. So I think things like that, where it's perhaps recommendations potentially even for new projects who are looking to understand how to make their project successful. I think that I would be happy that we had something in the consistency doc just to encourage people to think about that. Sorry, go for it, Tracy.
Yeah, so in the chat, I did put, we do have a place in another document that specifies that the maintainer's guide should contain paths for contributors to become maintainers. I'm wondering, Arun, if what you're suggesting is to have a standard template for what that might look like for new projects, which I think would fall potentially outside of this particular task force, but is still obviously something that might be good for us to recommend that projects follow, right? I don't know that anywhere we have anything that's written up or examples that we could point to that actually show how this is done in some of our other projects. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I guess that's a question, Arun, is that what you're thinking about, is more the specific example slash template of what this might look like?
Yes, and also like if we are not mandating where to find such info, maybe this is the time we can say like so for each project, for instance, if they have to look at so many places, they don't know where to look for such information, and that's what I was concerned about. We can always recommend a template. Sure.
Yeah. I think I think personally. Sorry, go for it, Arun.
No. Sorry. I'm unable to raise my hand. So, that's all I was thinking about from a consistency perspective. I understand like may spill beyond the task force objective, but the task force has facilitated in identifying something like that which we can improve. Sorry to interrupt you. Go on.
No, not at all. Yeah. I think it's I think it's a really good point. I think what I might do for specifically for item 3 is just reread the document myself and just see if there's a natural place to kind of just include some encouragement around that particular item, knowing that we have specific documents like the best practice guide that Tracy's dropped in, that say projects should have this and this and this and this. I think gently nudging people towards some of those things is no bad thing, and I think possibly. I think on the task force, we probably went around some of these discussions that several times for different areas around how much we should be, pointing people at guidelines that exist elsewhere, how much we should be avoiding that, and how much we should just be maybe treating it as a helpful guide, rather, to kind of complement the more formal guideline documents. So I personally found it quite tricky landing on the right decision for some of the areas similar to the ones you've raised. I think as to what makes sense to fall under this new document. So
Matthew, I would just say, sorry for not raising my hand, but I would just say that I think the approach that you've taken, which is not duplicating, is the best approach. I guess maybe there's a place at the beginning where you talk about the fact that you're not trying to duplicate other documents. You're just pointing to like the project or the project best practices and the maintainer best practices as links that people could jump to, right, and read those as well, right? That might be a useful sort of step.
Yeah, exactly. I think we discussed that quite a lot. So I will I'll go back through the PR and just make sure that we have something around that in there. And like I said, I definitely don't mind adding some of these softer things. I think where it's just where we end up clearly just duplicating content very closely that we have elsewhere, I think that would be a mistake. But where I think it's nudging people towards other content, I think that's less of a big deal. So I don't know, Tracy, do you want to go through some more of these specifically, or is it useful for me to take an offline action to kind of go through them a bit more one by one and maybe suggest some outcomes for each of them, either through updates to the PR or comments to say, I think maybe this one doesn't really fit into this document specifically.
Yeah, I mean,
I
think taking an offline approach is fine. I think if there's something specific that you would like to get, some initial thoughts on, or some discussion around, or clarification from Arun, right? Let's do that here now, so that you don't have to do the back and forth over a PR. But otherwise, yeah, if you think the other ones are pretty clear for you, then that's fine to take offline.
Yeah, I think 7 is one that, to me, so yeah, ones that might be worth raising quickly. So 7, I think, is one to me that is a challenging one, because I think this is contributors have consistency around SLAs for responding to PRs and issues and so on. I think that was one that a lot of people would really value, and I think especially project users would really value. I think the reality is that it can become very hard, as they're open source projects without kind of commercial imperatives to meet specific SLAs. I think it's a very fine balance between what you encourage projects to achieve as things like SLAs for responding to things. I know there are specific guidelines for security vulnerabilities, which I guess is probably worth treating totally separately for this particular discussion, because I think those warrant more specific SLAs. But I'd be interested to see what others think, particularly as many people on the call are maintainers of other projects. Again, as a softer document, it could encourage projects to give that some consideration. But it's difficult to prescribe too much, especially when it comes to consistency. I think this is an area that projects are likely to diverge quite a lot in just number of maintainers they have, how widely used they are, and so on. So yeah, I'd be keen to get a bit of input on the call on 7, I guess.
So I guess there's a question, like when I think of SLAs, those seem like they're supposed to be fairly firm. You're not supposed to go against them. I think that there are suggestions we can make, but requirements for SLAs for open source projects seem to be potentially, I don't know, in my mind, it's like that doesn't make sense to me. Obviously, I think for a project to be healthy, certain things have to happen, like responding to people in a timely fashion, right? But what is that time that we would recommend? I don't know. I think what's timely and what's not timely, but to say, okay, it's an hour, 24 hours, a week, I think those become difficult to specify. But I guess the question is, are we looking for specifics, or are we just saying that people should consider specifying what their project typically does, or that they're looking to improve what they typically do? What is it specifically that we're looking for here with SLAs?
So my thought process in that sense was, as of now, it's reactive in nature. Like we go through projects, and then during a quarterly review or maybe annual review, we go through like how long the project has been taking. Are there any pull requests pending for longer than expected duration? I was hoping that from a community perspective, it would be helpful to at least bring up those proactively if possible. Like bring those to attention so that somebody can at least take an action. Kind of feels like an escalation path. It could be to the maintainers themselves saying that, hey, you may have missed responding to this. At least inform them that that you are going to look at it at some point. or like you're going to come back to this question, but without having anything, any response, any kind of response, even a message saying that we'll come back to this at some point. That is the bad experience that I was thinking about.
Yeah,
So-
I think that's a good point. Hendrik, I think you've got a point as well.
Yeah, so I think defining something like an SLA in general would be problematic. So when I, for example, look at Hyro, where we have some projects that are maintained by Hedera and Hashgraph, where having an SLA in theory kind of would be possible. We have, for example, one project which is a Python SDK that is maintained 100% by the community. And by community, I mean our community, but in that case, meaning by individual people working on it in the free time, which is for us a super great and important project because it shows, and it's a positive thing about being open, being diverse, and going to a vendor neutral way. And I know if we now would say, hey, you need to follow some kind of SLAs, that would create pressure on those people and that would stop those people to continue their work. On the other hand, what I'm thinking is what could be done is saying like, hey, we have a tag, let's call it a tag or a label, which is regarding this is a project guaranteeing this or that in case of SLAs, and projects can decide to add it like to their project in the README or whatever, so that we as a tech define a standard and a project can decide to follow that. By following it, it gets this stamp, label, however you want to call it. And we then, especially in the project reviews, need to check if that is still the case and if the project should keep that label up. So it could be used as a kind of advertisement for that project. Yeah, we react fast.
Yeah, I think personally, I think it's one where it feels like there's no harm in encouraging projects to think about it. It's very hard to see a way that you could stipulate too much about it. I think given that it's about consistency, I think one thing we could do is say that there could be a consistent approach to how you talk about SLAs for these things. It kind of relates, or is linked to consistency around how projects tag issues, for example. There's consistency generally around that. I think if it's at least if you're going to talk about your SLA, even if your SLA is, look, we don't have any commitment to turn things around in any specific period of time for whatever reason, I think that fact could be documented somewhere, and it could be caveated with whatever caveats, repo specific differences and so on. So I think consistency around how you talk about your SLA or your SLAs is reasonable. I certainly think having consistent SLAs is very difficult, as I think others have said. So Tracy, I'm just looking through the list of other ones.
Matthew, before we do that, I think you got a couple
Sure.
hands here.
Sorry, yeah.
One is me, and then the other one's Marcus. So, I guess the thing to remember about this particular task force is that this is consistency across projects, not consistency within a project, right? And so, I think in the guideline that we have is that we want projects to document how they handle responses. I think that's okay, right? I think if we want to say that a project will handle responses within a certain time frame. That's not necessarily what this task force was for. So I think just remembering what the intent of this task force was versus, thinking about this from a particular project lens. I think we're really trying to get hey, this is how projects should behave across Dell FDT.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. And yeah, I think it's a really good point, Tracy. Marcus, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to basically second what Tracy said before, that when we speak about SLAs for response time on PRs and issues, and think about, okay, should we encourage projects to introduce something like that? As Tracy said, this sounds like, okay, we already have an unhealthy project if we have to speak about that. Just if I think about that, a healthy project would basically respond to those PRs just naturally. About the second point of Tracy, she just made about the consistency of projects. Well, this is kind of interesting when we then speak about SLAs, and different projects have different numbers of contributors. Some projects basically have strong support by companies where people working full-time on it. Other projects are more like pet project of individuals working in their free time on that. And then, well, it becomes, I think, difficult to be consistent among those projects with different, let's say, maintainer background.
Cool. Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, I think I agree that there's obviously a huge diversity of projects and number of maintainers and amount of backing and so on. And I think the TSC obviously welcomes that diversity. And so it's from an SLA point of view, it's particularly tricky to talk about SLAs from a consistency point of view, I think. I was just looking through the other items just on the list in case. I think maybe the only other one would be number 8 around roadmap. And I think this has come up quite a lot. Certainly, I see it. I think in Bess's Discord channels, I see questions about roadmap a bit. Certainly, we do get questions for projects like Firefly and Paladin about roadmap. And the use of things like project boards to track upcoming releases. I am actually just going to the PR now to check if we included something, but we certainly discussed that in some detail, I think. I think having something spelled out as a roadmap is valuable. In the task force was things like your landing page as a project having a degree of consistency. Primarily for the benefit of people being able to easily find basic things, basic information. And so I think, in fact, looking through the PR, we have this section on repository landing page experience. And I'm just looking to see if we talked about roadmap specifically. Yeah, so I don't know, Rai, if you want to maybe just pull up the PR. I'm just looking at the file itself now. If you put the second file, that one into view mode, then it might be good worth going down to the landing page section down a little more, and just there, stop repository landing page experience. So yeah, so you can see there, one thing we have there is trying to highlight the fact this is the first place people see, and it's not about saying this is what you must have in the README. It's more about saying, what's the experience when people arrive at the project? And you can see there's a bullet at the bottom of that list, which is information about the project roadmap. But just where do I find it? It doesn't have to be the roadmap is there in the landing page, but something about it. Maybe here's the wiki where I find it, or here are the boards where we're tracking it, or here's the Discord channel where we're discussing it, and so on. So we did try to nudge people through the guidelines on something around that, without prescribing how or what your mechanism for doing that is. So yeah, maybe having that in on screen to people have views on whether or not that's enough. Is just saying it would be good to point people at it. Is that sufficient, do you think?
Where you asking me?
Anyone really? Anyone? Just around. I think your point 8 was around roadmap and get certainly I value your view, Aaron.
Right. So I like the idea of having like one place where they land on, and then they diverge from there for different information. So I certainly feel like having the roadmap visible to larger audience. I know like it is being documented. It may not be like consistently documented in a similar place. So having that info communicated, it carries a weight. It carries that. It carries that weight that it communicates that the project is forward-looking, has several plan releases, and it also communicates where the community can start focusing on. It communicates a bunch of other aspects as well. That's how I was thinking about the roadmap. I know, like in particular, Pebble used to follow their documentation, the roadmap items, the next features, things like that. I'm sure like few other projects are also doing that, but in different ways. It may not be just consistently documented in a way. If people can exactly know where to.
Anyone else have kind of thoughts? How they handle roadmaps on their projects? How much they communicate them, kind of publicly, and have discussions publicly about roadmaps?
So Matthew, I guess I would say they're important, but I don't know that we need to tie any project down to a specific way of doing the roadmaps. But it's the same. It's part of the same reason that we try to set out goals for the projects in the annual reviews, right? Is to make sure that people are making some progress towards whatever it is they're trying to accomplish. So I think the way it's stated here, right, is that there should be some pointer off to the project roadmap is good. Because it does make people think about what is it they're trying to move their project towards.
Yeah, I certainly second the comment that mechanics, and again that was a kind of a common theme throughout the task force. Mechanics of how a project does something is not the important thing. I think that from most people's point of view, it's just that you are doing something to communicate certain things, is the important thing. So talking publicly about your roadmap and making it easy to find, I think is the important thing, not the technology or the wiki or the place you stick it.
Okay. Anything else on this PR then that we want to talk about today, or are we ready to move kind of forward from here?
So just checking next actions, Tracy. I mean, as I said, I'm happy to go through that list and maybe digest it a bit more offline and put some responses and possibly some additions into the PR ready for, I guess, not next week, which is cancelled, but the week after. Is that the main kind of action out of this discussion?
Yeah, I think so. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to review this yet, please do. The intention would be that by the time we meet next, we should be in a place where we can vote on whether we're ready to check this PR in. So please do get your feedback in for Matthew to absorb and ask questions on the PR. Obviously, that'll have to be offline, but yeah, hopefully the place is to get this to us being able to check it in for the next meeting. Okay. So thank you, Matthew, for that. And thank you, Arun, for providing your thoughts and feedback, and for everybody else who's already reviewed it. I think that's a good document for people to have a look at as they're trying to put projects together and understand what it is that they're trying to do to match what else exists within LFTT and really make that something that people can easily absorb. So the other item that we had on our agenda today was to review the 2025 goals. I don't think we necessarily have enough time for that, but I do want to just drop a link, and maybe Rai, you wouldn't mind just opening up this link for people to have a look. Typically, we do a retrospective for the TAC for the year on, kind of, shout outs, what went well, what could we do better or differently, and then recommendations for next year's TAC to take. Typically we do that in a meeting, but I thought maybe this year, with a number of people who, maybe are struggling to attend the meetings, maybe it would be good if we had an offline mechanism to do this. So I found this tool, put together the questions. You can see that people have already started to add some thoughts to this, but obviously not everybody has had a chance yet. Basically, the way this tool works is you write whatever it is in your private section before you publish that thing. So if you have a particular, card that you want to type up, you type it up there in each of the different columns. And then when you're happy with the way you've written them, you click the publish all button that exists in that particular column, and it'll publish it for everybody to see. Until you do that publish all, though, nobody else sees your particular comments. So if you're, working on something and just trying to think through how you want to say it or whatever the case may be, then you don't have to worry about other people seeing your in progress kind of notes to yourself. And yeah, so I guess what I'm asking is for everybody to take some time over the next couple weeks to add their thoughts to this. I think what we'll do in an upcoming meeting is, besides review the goals, also review kind of some of the thoughts that have been put in here. See if there's any sort of questions or additional comments that people want to make based on, potentially other people's cards, and see if there's some discussion that we can get around, some of the things that maybe we're recommending for the next TAC, or some of the things that we want to do differently in the future, just so that, we have a good sort of back and forth discussion, and it's not just all, offline thoughts, right? So that's the intention behind this, is to, one, capture the information, and two, to be able to discuss it in a future meeting. So yeah, please do take the time to do that. I think everybody's thoughts are important on this. There are things that obviously went well, but there's obviously things that we can do better or differently. And I think those things are important for us to capture so that we think about those going forward, right? And also what what are things that we think were open items potentially for the next TAC to tackle. Maybe that gives them a good place to start instead of starting from scratch, right? I know there'll be a number of new folks on the TAC next year, and obviously we want to help guide them. The other thing that I think some of these remaining calls will end up being as well is last year we started the process of when the new TAC is formed, having them join a meeting so that they can ask questions of the existing TAC, and there can be some back and forth discussion between the outgoing folks and the new coming folks, and some learning, some sharing, that sort of thing. So I think these are, the sorts of meetings that we'll be having in December when we come back. There's probably, I would say, 3 potential meetings in December. So there won't be a whole lot of future meetings that we have going forward before we're kind of closing out the year and everybody's heading off to holidays and time with their families and things like that. So yeah, I just think that's for us to focus on going forward, and we'll obviously still have a few more meetings here, but I think we're getting close to the end of our term, and really I think obviously appreciate everybody taking the time to provide their thoughts and feedback here, so we can make sure that things run smoothly for the next TAC that comes in. And yeah, I guess maybe with that, I'll stop and see if there's anything else that anybody wants to bring up before we close out today's meeting.
Yeah, sounds good, Tracy. I found the tool quite easy to use. Actually, it was quite intuitive, and yeah, I've added some thoughts there.
Great, appreciate that, Matthew. And glad that it was easy to use. It took me a while to figure out how to set up the board, but once I did, it was pretty easy from there. So I'm hoping everybody can at least add a card or two to each of the different columns and provide their thoughts for us to move forward. And then I think the other thing, obviously, just before we close, Diana, at some point, we'll see if there's anything else that needs to be done from the contributor ladder task force for the TAC to discuss, or if there's anything open for us to go through there.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
All right, great. So if there's nothing else for today, let's go ahead and close out today's meeting. For those of you in the US, please do enjoy your holiday next week, and we will all speak again in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you. Bye.